The veil slipped from her hand and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. "Hold it together, Ava," she whispered, gripping the edge of the vanity. Outside, the faint echo of a string quartet drifted through the air. Guests, real or not, were waiting. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears as she caught her reflection in the mirror: white dress, trembling hands, eyes that didn't look like hers. A knock came. Sharp. Controlled. "Ava?" His voice. Deep, smooth, the kind that didn't need to ask for attention, it claimed it. She swallowed hard. "I'm fine." The door creaked open, and Julian Hale stepped in, dressed in black tuxedo perfection. Even the way he stood, still, certain, felt rehearsed. But his eyes told a different story. "They're ready for us," he said softly. "Right." She tried to sound calm, but her throat was dry. "Let's go make your campaign proud." Julian hesitated, then walked closer. "Our campaign," he corrected, adjusting his cufflinks. "You're part of this too." Ava nodded, though she didn't believe it. She was just a hired planner, stepping in as a stand-in bride because the model bailed. One photo shoot. One paycheck. One night pretending to belong to a world that would never be hers. But when he offered his arm, the world seemed to pause. The cameras outside, the soft rustle of silk, the hum of the guests, all faded for a breath. She took his arm. The doors opened. And suddenly, the lights hit them, applause rippled through the hall, and she was walking toward the altar beside the billionaire every woman in the room watched like he was a fairy tale. Ava forced her smile. "Just remember," she whispered, half to herself, "it's all pretend." Julian's lips twitched, not into a smile but something unreadable. "If you say so." 3 weeks earlier, her life was chaos wrapped in deadlines. Ava Sinclair had built her small event planning company from nothing. She was good, too good, at pretending everything was fine. Her rent was 2 months late, her father's medical bills were piling up, and her ex had just texted to remind her he was, finally engaged to someone who wanted stability. Then came the call. "Julian Hale wants a private planner for a concept shoot," her assistant said. "Double your usual rate." Ava almost dropped her phone. Julian Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, the man whose face was on every magazine, whose rumored relationships ended faster than the ink on the headlines dried. "Why me?" "Apparently, he liked how you handled his sister's engagement last year." That night, Ava stood outside Hale Tower, clutching her tablet like a shield. The man she'd planned that event for barely spoke that day, except to thank her quietly when the night ended. She hadn't expected him to remember her name. But when she stepped into his office, he was already standing, hands in his pockets, watching her like she was the only person in the room. "Miss Sinclair," he said. "I'm told you make chaos look like art." She blinked. "Depends on the chaos." He smiled faintly. "Perfect. I have a project for you. It's unconventional." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside, concept sketches, floral notes, and a headline: "The Wedding Campaign, a Love Worth Selling." She frowned. "A wedding campaign?" He nodded. "For my new luxury line. It needs to feel authentic. Emotional. Real. Then hire a couple," she said. He didn't answer. Just leaned back, eyes fixed on hers. "I need someone who understands details, someone who doesn't fake emotion. Someone who feels it." Ava laughed nervously. "You want me to plan your fake wedding? And star in it," he said simply. The air went still. "You want me to be the bride?" He met her gaze. "You fit the aesthetic. You're not performative. People will believe it." Her pulse quickened. I'm not a model. I'm not asking you to be one, he said. I'm asking you to play yourself. For one day. She should have said no. She should have laughed, walked out, and found another job. But when she saw the number he'd written on the contract, she thought of her father's hospital bills. Of how tired she was of losing. Fine, she said. But I expect professionalism. His mouth curved, just slightly. Of course. Professionalism. Now, under the chandelier's glow, Ava realized professionalism was the last thing in his eyes. The officiant's voice echoed. We gather here today. Her mind drifted. The guests looked too perfect, their smiles too polished. Every camera lens glinted like a secret waiting to be caught. She'd done hundreds of weddings, but never like this. Julian turned slightly, his hand brushing hers. His touch was steady, grounding. You're shaking, he murmured. I'm fine, she lied. The officiant smiled. Julian Hale, do you take Ava Sinclair? Julian looked at her. The air shifted. I do. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't read from the cue card she'd written. It was quiet, real, too heavy to be pretend. Ava froze. Their eyes met. And for a second, the whole world disappeared. When it came to her turn, her voice barely worked. I do. The audience clapped, camera shutters clicked. The kiss cue came next. She barely had time to brace before his hand found her jaw, gentle yet unyielding. His lips met hers, slow, deliberate. A performance kiss, supposedly. But when he deepened it, just slightly, her breath caught. Applause erupted. But Ava's heart wasn't part of the script anymore. Later, when the photographers packed up and the guests began to leave, Ava exhaled, finally able to breathe again. Well, she said lightly, unclipping her veil, that's one fake wedding successfully executed. Julian didn't answer. She glanced up. His expression wasn't relief. It was something else, something unreadable, almost haunted. What? She asked. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Nothing will be cancelled. Ava frowned. What? He looked down at her hand, the one still wearing the ring. Because nothing about this was fake. Ava blinked, convinced she'd misheard. The laughter that had been lingering in her throat died instantly. What are you talking about? She asked, her tone caught somewhere between disbelief and a nervous laugh. It's done, Julian. The shoot's over. Julian didn't move. His gaze was steady, too calm, too heavy. It's not over. The room felt smaller, the fading music distant and hollow. Technicians packed up lights, florists carried out flowers, but all she could hear was his voice. I made it real, he said quietly. Ava let out a soft, incredulous laugh. You made it, what does that even mean? Julian took a step closer, his words deliberate, measured. The license. The vows. The officiant. It wasn't staged paperwork. Everything was legal. The world tilted. She took a step back. You're lying. I'm not. Her throat tightened. You can't just, Julian, you can't do that. I didn't want to play pretend, he said, his voice rough around the edges now. Not with you. Ava felt her heartbeat in her fingertips. You said this was business. A campaign. You signed a contract. And so did you, he interrupted. You agreed to the terms. I just didn't tell you one thing. Didn't tell me what? That I meant it. For a moment, everything stilled. The chandelier above them flickered as if reacting to the tension. Ava felt the air go cold, her body rooted to the marble floor. She tried to steady her voice, but it came out a whisper. "You used me." Julian's jaw tightened. "I didn't." "You tricked me, Julian," she shot back. "You manipulated me into something I didn't consent to. You think because you have money, you can rewrite what's real?" He exhaled sharply, stepping closer. "No. I think money has ruined what's real. That's why I did it differently this time." She shook her head. "You sound insane." He didn't argue. He just looked at her, really looked at her, with that quiet intensity she'd spent weeks pretending not to notice. "You don't understand. I've done the parties, the contracts, the women who smiled because they saw a headline waiting to happen. But you looked at me like I was human. And I couldn't let that end at pretend." Ava stared at him, anger flashing behind her tears. "So you decided the only way to keep me was to trap me?" "It wasn't a trap," he said. "It was a chance. For something that wasn't staged." The word chance made her chest ache. Ava turned, tearing the ring off her finger. "You crossed a line." Julian's hand shot out, catching hers before she could drop it. His touch wasn't forceful, just desperate. "Please," he said softly. "Listen to me before you decide what line I crossed." Her voice trembled. "Let go." He did. Instantly. The silence that followed was brutal. Only the sound of her heels against the marble floor filled the room as she walked away. Outside, the sky had opened up, rain hammering against the glass walls of the hall. Photographers were huddling equipment into vans, the fairy lights flickering against the wet pavement. Ava walked out, ignoring the cold droplets that soaked through her hair. She just needed air. Space. Distance. But as she reached her car, she froze, because behind her reflection in the window, Julian stood at the doorway, unmoving, his tuxedo drenched by the rain, his expression unreadable. She turned, voice shaking. "What is wrong with you?" "I told you," he said, rain dripping from his hair, his tone almost pleading. Nothing about this was fake. She wanted to scream, to make it hurt the way it was hurting her. But all she could do was stare at him, her chest tight with anger and confusion. "You think this is romantic? It's not. It's cruel." He took a few steps forward, the rain between them like a veil. "It's the truth. And I'd rather you hate me for being honest than love me for pretending." Ava's eyes burned. "You don't know what love is, Julian." He smiled sadly. "Then teach me." That was it. She couldn't take another word. Ava climbed into her car and slammed the door, heart pounding, hands trembling as she started the engine. Through the windshield, she saw him still standing there, silent, drenched, unflinching. She drove off without looking back. The next morning, Ava woke to 30 missed calls from unknown numbers. News outlets had caught wind of the private Hale wedding, splashing her name across headlines she never wanted. Her phone buzzed again, this time, from her assistant. "Is it true?" the voice on the other end asked breathlessly. "You actually married him?" Ava hung up. By noon, she was sitting in her apartment, blinds drawn, coffee untouched. Her phone buzzed again, "Julian." She ignored it. He texted instead, "Meet me. One last time." She almost threw the phone. But then she saw the second message. "If you won't talk to me, at least read the file I left on your desk." Her eyes darted to her kitchen counter. There it was, a sealed envelope she hadn't noticed before. Inside were documents, the marriage license, signatures, and a letter in his handwriting. "Ava," it began. "I know I've hurt you. I know you have every right to walk away. But I didn't do this to own you. I did it to show you that not everything built on contracts and cameras is empty. I love you. I loved you before this shoot. Before the dress. Before the lights. She stopped reading, her chest tightening. Below the letter was a photo, one she hadn't seen before. It was from his sister's engagement, months ago. Julian wasn't looking at the couple. He was looking at her. Her breath caught. Then came the last line of his note. If you still believe it was all fake, I won't stop you from leaving. But if you ever felt even one moment was real, meet me where it started. She looked at the clock. 6 p.m. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Ava sat in her car across from Hale Tower, the rain tapping against the windshield. She hated herself for coming, hated that her heart still pulled her here. When she finally stepped out, the wind caught her hair, the night cold and restless. The lobby doors opened automatically as she approached, and there he was, waiting, just like before. He looked exhausted, his tie undone, eyes dark but soft. I didn't think you'd come, he said quietly. I almost didn't. He nodded. But you did. She stared at him for a long moment before whispering, tell me why. No cameras. No performance. Just truth. Julian took a breath, then said, because when I'm around you, I don't feel like I'm performing anymore. Ava's breath hitched. She wanted to hate him, wanted to walk out of that tower and never look back. But the way he said it, soft, stripped of his usual armor, made her stay rooted to the spot. Performing, she echoed quietly. You've been performing your whole life, Julian. You lied your way through business, through people's hearts. Why should I believe this time is any different? He didn't flinch. Because this time, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to see me. Ava crossed her arms, every word laced with bitterness. You're a billionaire. You don't need to be seen. You buy attention. You buy everything. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. You think I don't know that? You think I'm proud of it? Every woman I've dated knew my worth before they knew my name. Every smile was calculated. Every "I love you" had a PR clause hidden somewhere in it. Then maybe that's the life you chose, Ava shot back. But you dragged me into it without a choice. His eyes softened. You had one. That day at the venue, when I asked you to stay after the shoot, you could have left. But you didn't. Her jaw tightened. I stayed because you said we needed a few more photos. He gave a half smile, painful, almost regretful. And yet, you looked at me like you meant every vow. The air between them stilled. Ava's chest rose and fell faster, flashes of that day replaying in her head, the way his hands trembled when he slid the ring onto her finger, the way his voice cracked when he said, I do. Stop, she whispered, shaking her head. Don't rewrite what happened. Julian stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Then tell me the truth, Ava. When you looked into my eyes that day, were you acting? Her throat went dry. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to destroy the power he had over her. But the words wouldn't come. She faltered. It doesn't matter what I felt. It wasn't real. Julian's eyes flickered with pain. It was to me. Ava turned away, walking toward the window that overlooked the city. The storm outside had quieted, leaving streaks of rain glowing under the streetlights. You can't build love out of deception, Julian. You can't force something real out of something that started as a lie. He approached slowly, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. Maybe not. But sometimes, you only realize what's real when the pretending ends. Her voice broke. You don't get to make that sound noble. You took away my choice. He nodded, his tone quiet, sincere. "You're right. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back that choice." She turned to him, her eyes wet. "Why me? You could have anyone, someone who fits your world." He hesitated, searching her face. "Because you didn't care about my world. The first time we met, you spilled coffee on my suit, cursed under your breath, and walked away before I could even tell you who I was. You treated me like I was someone, not something. No one's done that in years." Ava looked down, her heart warring with itself. Julian's voice softened. "You once told me that love should be quiet, not loud. That it should feel like peace, not chaos." She frowned. "You remember that?" "I remember everything you say." That was it. The walls she'd built around her heart began to crack. But then she caught herself, because feelings weren't enough to erase betrayal. "You talk like you understand love, but all you've shown is control. You didn't trust me enough to let me choose you freely." Julian swallowed hard, guilt flickering across his face. "I didn't trust that you'd stay." Ava's eyes softened despite herself. "You think you can buy forever with a ring and a legal form?" "No," he said. "But I thought maybe if I gave you something that couldn't be cancelled, maybe I'd have a chance to prove it." The silence that followed was heavy, too heavy. She turned to leave. "You don't prove love by trapping someone in it, Julian." He didn't stop her this time. He just said quietly, "Then I'll set you free." Ava froze. "I already called the attorney," he said. "The annulment papers are ready. All you need to do is sign." Her chest tightened. "You mean, it's really over?" He nodded, his voice breaking slightly. "If that's what you want." For the first time, he looked small, like a man stripped of all the power his wealth could ever buy. Ava took the envelope from his hand. The weight of it felt unbearable. She turned, walking toward the exit, but before she reached the door, Julian spoke again. "Just for the record," he said softly, "I meant every word of my vows." Her hand trembled on the doorknob. Without looking back, she whispered, "Goodbye, Julian." The next week passed in slow motion. The world was still buzzing about the billionaire who married his model, but Ava avoided every headline. She ignored every call, buried herself in work, tried to forget the sound of his voice saying her name like it meant something. But forgetting wasn't working. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that moment again, his trembling hands, his eyes, the way his voice cracked when he said, "Nothing will be cancelled." She tossed and turned in bed that night, unable to sleep. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." It was from Julian. She hesitated, but opened it anyway. Inside was a single attachment, a video file titled, "For When You Forget It Was Real." Her heart pounded as she pressed play. It wasn't paparazzi footage. It was raw behind-the-scenes clips. Unedited. Moments she hadn't even known were filmed, him helping her with her veil, brushing off her nervous laughter, whispering something that made her blush. Then came a final clip. The ceremony. The exact moment he whispered it. The camera zoomed in close enough to catch his lips forming the words, "Nothing will be cancelled, not this time." The screen faded to black. And before the video ended, his voice came one last time. "If you still think it was fake, I'll stop trying. But if even one part of you still remembers what it felt like, meet me tomorrow at the chapel." Ava's hands shook as she paused the video. Tomorrow. At the same place it all began. The next morning, the world was still gray, heavy with the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Ava sat in her car outside the small countryside chapel where the fake wedding had been filmed. The same white roses lined the archway, now wilted and pale, as though even the flowers had been waiting for her return. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. She didn't know why she'd come. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the part of her heart that still believed, not in Julian's money or power, but in the way he looked at her like she was something rare in a world that owned everything. She took a deep breath, stepped out, and walked toward the chapel doors. They creaked open, and her breath caught. Julian was there, standing at the altar, dressed simply this time, no tuxedo, no cameras, no crowd. Just him. And her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. Ava's eyes met his, cautious but searching. "I almost didn't." He gave a faint smile. "That's progress. Last time, you said you wouldn't." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "What is this, Julian? Another grand gesture? Another scene you've orchestrated to prove a point?" "No," his voice was low, steady. "This isn't about proving anything anymore. It's about ending it the right way, or beginning something that never got the chance." Her gaze flicked around the chapel, memories flooding back. "You really brought me here just to reopen old wounds?" He took a step forward. "No. To finally tell you the truth." She crossed her arms. "The truth? You already told me everything. That you tricked me. That it was all real. That you meant your vows. What's left?" Julian hesitated. "What's left, is why." Ava frowned. "Why what?" "Why I did it," he said, voice breaking slightly. "Why I made it real." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, worn from being carried too long. He handed it to her. She unfolded it slowly. It was a medical report. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at, until she saw the name at the top, Eleanor Hale. Julian's mother. The diagnosis hit her like a punch. "Pancreatic cancer," she whispered. Her eyes shot up to him. "Julian." "She didn't have long," he said quietly. "She made one request before she died. She wanted to see me married, to someone I truly loved. Not another PR stunt. Not another empty relationship. Just, love. Real love." Ava's voice trembled. "So you staged a wedding? You thought that would fix it?" He shook his head. "I didn't stage it to fix anything. I staged it because I'd already found the person she wanted me to marry. You." Tears filled her eyes. "Julian, you didn't even ask me." "I know," he said. "And I hate myself for that. But I also knew that if I told you everything, you'd run before I could even try." He looked at her then, raw, stripped of all the arrogance she'd once hated. "I thought I could control the story, make it perfect for her, make it perfect for you. But love isn't a story you can script, Ava. It's chaos. It's ugly. And I ruined it trying to make it beautiful." The words sank deep, silent between them. Ava's lips trembled. "You lied to me, Julian. You took something sacred and turned it into your redemption arc." "I know," he whispered. "And I'll carry that forever. But you also gave her peace before she died. She smiled in her last week, Ava. She thought I'd finally found love. And even though you didn't know it, you were the reason she left this world believing I wasn't alone anymore." Ava pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Julian stepped closer, his voice cracking. "I wasn't trying to steal your freedom. I was just desperate to give someone I loved a reason to smile again. And I chose the wrong way to do it." She stared at him, broken between fury and forgiveness. "You're impossible." "I know," he said, a small, pained laugh escaping. "But I'm also yours, if you'll still have me." She looked away, shaking her head. You can't keep saying things like that. You don't get to choose what's real anymore. Not after everything. Julian nodded slowly, taking a step back. Then I won't. He handed her a small velvet box. This was supposed to be the real ring. The one I never gave you. Ava hesitated, opening it. Inside was a simple gold band, no diamonds, no extravagance. Just a ring. No contracts this time, he said softly. No cameras. If you walk away now, I won't follow. But if you still believe even a fraction of what we shared that day was real, then stay. The silence that followed was deafening. The sound of her heartbeat filled the air. Ava looked at the ring, then at him. His eyes were glassy, waiting, but not pleading. He wasn't the untouchable billionaire anymore. He was just a man standing in front of her, asking for something money couldn't buy. She walked toward him slowly, every step uncertain, every breath heavy with everything unsaid. When she finally stopped in front of him, she said, "You broke my trust, Julian. But, you also reminded me what it feels like to be seen. And I hate that I still love you for that." Julian's eyes glistened. Then maybe that's a place to start. Ava exhaled shakily. Maybe. She took his hand gently, placed the ring back in the box, and closed it. But not today. Not yet. He nodded, his smile faint but genuine. Then I'll wait. However long it takes. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. Julian? He looked up. Next time, she said softly, ask me before you make me your forever. He smiled sadly. I promise. 6 months later, Ava stood before a crowd at her first solo art exhibit. Her photography had finally gained recognition, real recognition. One of the portraits on display caught her eye, Julian, standing under rainlight, looking both lost and found at once. Behind her, a familiar voice murmured, "You still make chaos look beautiful." Ava turned, and there he was. No tuxedo. No spotlight. Just Julian, holding a coffee cup, smiling like the man she'd once fallen for. She smiled faintly. You kept your promise. He nodded. And I'll keep keeping it. There was no grand kiss, no sweeping music, just two people, learning what real love looked like when stripped of performance. Because sometimes, the most romantic words weren't, "I love you." They were, "Nothing will be cancelled." If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us tell more stories that remind the world, love is still real, even when it hurts. Until next time, this is StoryVerse TV.